This is incredibly disturbing because Iran has just been hit. Recent reports, for example, have said that Khomeini has been essentially assassinated. And this is alarming because what else are they meant to do? When you're in a position where you're being attacked and the stated goal at the outset, or the onset, excuse me, is regime change, then what are they meant to do? They're going to fight and fight hard. And so this kind of rhetoric from Trump is deeply troubling because it shows a commitment and a willingness to sacrifice lives on both sides. Let us not get this wrong or mistaken here. Let us not sort of beat around the bush here. The Iranian military is unique in terms of the world, and they're unique because they have a tribal ethos. What do I mean by that? Generally speaking, as laid out in the book, um, The Myth of the Peaceful Savage, I can't remember who it's by, War Before Civilization, The Myth of the Peaceful Savage, tribal warfare at times has the goal of killing as many of the enemy as possible. This is the case for Iran. Their military is designed, their doctrine and everything, tactics and strategies and so on and so forth, are designed for two things. Number one, killing as many enemy personnel as possible. Number two, causing as much destruction as possible. Those are the goals of the Iranian military. And so Trump, in saying what he has said, has essentially signed the death certificates of many people on both sides. This is a terrible, terrible development from an evil orange clown.
Doing more threats after U.S. and Israeli forces launched an attack, killing their supreme leader, the Ayatollah Khamenei.
Israel and the United States.
You see, listen to that. Israeli and US forces have killed the supreme leader of Iran, Ayatollah Khomeini. Imagine if this had been the other way around, if Iran had killed the President of America, there would be outrage. It would be no stop to all of the sort of crying and tears and so on and so forth. And yet, when the shoe is on the other foot, not on one's own, suddenly it doesn't matter. Damned be them, seems to be the ethos.
States have attacked Iran. They have violated international law and the Charter of the United Nations. They must be held accountable.
Yes, that is true. This is in violation of international law. This is exactly because the notion of preemptive attack, which is how it's sort of being framed, is already legally murky territory. That's number one. But number two, the in order for a preemptive attack to at least be a somewhat lighter shade of grey, then you have to be able to demonstrate that there is a legitimate threat to begin with. This is not the case with Iran. The case with Iran is that there really is no clear evidence, aside from a lot of bluster and rhetoric from the Khomeini, the Ayatollah Khomeini, um, towards Israel. But there is no sort of evidence demonstrating any kind of planned attack or anything like that. And so this is an preemptive attack without sufficient evidence to prove that there was a threat to begin with. In other words, this is a straight up attack on a country that hasn't done anything. People need to take that into account. And as for the Israeli nonsense, like, oh, but they fund Hamas and so on and so forth, this is nonsense. Lots of different governments worldwide fund different groups worldwide, many of them highly questionable, I might add. That doesn't give you pretext for war. That's not how things work in terms of international law.
So long as this aggression continues, Iran will continue to exercise its inherent right of self-defense firmly, proportionately, and without hesitation until the aggression ends.
That's exactly right, and that's something that is often forgotten in situations like this. If your country is attacked by a foreign country, you have the right to resist, and you have the right to defend yourself. It doesn't matter if that country attacking you is America, if it is Israel, if it is whoever, it doesn't matter. You have the right to defend your country. Hence, Hezbollah. Hezbollah is not the evil organization propaganda would have you believe, but rather Hezbollah was a response to the Israeli invasion of Lebanon.
And now there are concerns that Iran could use their terror proxies to attack Americans on U.S. soil. FBI Director Kash Patel instructing counterterrorism and intelligence teams to be on high alert and mobilize all security assets needed, while the NYPD also on high alert and will be increasing patrols throughout that city. Joining us now is
And then, of course, this is going to result in a lot of racial profiling and things like that, things that we don't need right now. And even if Iran doesn't call on these proxy groups, some of them may decide to go ahead and attack anyway, out of a kind of pleasing the master preemptively, if that makes sense.
Jacob Oladort. He is the Chief Research Officer at the American First Policy Institute, former CIA officer and former Middle East advisor at the DoD in President Trump's first term. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. I want to just ping off out of this news with the president warning Iran not to escalate.
You see, and you see how imperial that thinking is. Warning Iran not to escalate after initiating war on them, in which you have declared your intention is regime change. Think about it. Think how arrogant and smug that language is.
The Ayatollah is dead. The Iranian
You see, and after killing their supreme leader, the Ayatollah Khomeini, he says, but don't react, don't escalate things, or we will come down harder. This is empire. This is all the things that, by the way, 2016 Donald Trump was rallying against. This is why Alex Jones, for example, came out in support of him. Well, I would like to see the response of people like Alex Jones to what Trump is doing now.
state media announced that a few hours ago. So this is all very fresh in Iran right now. How do you think they respond today as they threaten to really hit harder?
Well, it's great to be with you on this historic event. Look, Iran so far has been responding through its usual playbook we've seen over the last 3 years of volleying these huge barrages of missiles and drones, making big threats. Of course, the question becomes their capability and really what they have right now at the moment in this hour of desperation. The question for me, too, we've never seen Iran this weak or this desperate. And so it's a little bit like with a caged wild animal. You never know. There's an unpredictability factor there. So I think.
Exactly. Caged wild animal. It's a very good analogy. That is exactly what we're seeing at the moment. Except the animal is not caged. Rather, you are in the cage with the animal. Do not underestimate Iran. They have, just because the war is asymmetric, does not mean they aren't capable of killing as many American personnel as possible. And they will kill as many of the enemy as possible. This is their ethos when it comes to warfare.
It's a lot of all eyes waiting and trying to see what's going to happen next. But so far, I think Iran is so weakened that I think it's all desperation at the moment.
You know, we've been really lucky here at home.
Yeah, I have to disagree with this man. The idea that so far Iran is so weakened that it's all desperation at some point. This is the propaganda that's going to come out. That this is similar to Venezuela, where you just get in and get out and it's all over in a jiffy. That's not going to happen here. Iran, the military, the terrain, and so on and so forth. It is all geared towards a long, expensive, and bloody war. This is what Trump has set up.
Because We haven't seen a large-scale attack from Iran, and others have. You know, Israel constantly suffers from attacks from Iranian proxies. This is
See, in the way that she put it, Israel constantly suffers from attacks by Iranian proxies. Well, this is, again, this language, this propagandistic language in which the people are cheering, calling for war, and using the righteous cause of the Kurds and of the Iranian people who want freedom and so on and so forth to essentially be cheerleaders for war. Israel is not a victim of Iranian proxies. Again, these groups are totally independent, and yes, they get funding from Iran, but philosophically speaking, which sort of come at it from an analytic perspective, to what degree does Iran have control over these groups? Well, it's obvious that these groups more or less act on their own. And so to say that Israel, who have carried out a genocide in Gaza for the last 2 to 3 years, is some sort of victim in the hands of Iran is just nonsense. This is a typical Fox News rubbish.
the UN ambassador from Israel explaining just how brutal the regime has been and how it targets civilians all the time. Watch.
As we speak, in the last hour, a rocket targeted the city of Tel Aviv.
You see, and notice this, they showed the other person, the representative for Iran, who rightfully invoked international law, and they didn't sort of say anything, kind of, downplay it or whatever. And then this side, the host, she comes in and talks about the brutality of the regime and so on and so forth. I'm not denying that that's a case, by the way, but is that a warrant or license for war? At the end of the day, Trump has shown his true face. He is essentially a lapdog for Israel. That's what he is. And so anyone with anti-Semitic, anti-Jewish conspiracy theories right now in America is somewhat righteous or understandable in their believing this, because it looks that way on paper, doesn't it? This tiny foreign regime, this tiny foreign government. Remember that Israel stole nuclear material from America back in the day, back in the 1960s or 1970s. Let us also not forget Israel's doctrine, the Samson doctrine, in which they will literally are willing to preemptively use nuclear weapons against their own neighbors. So this is a terrible, terrible development.
Civilians, they don't target military bases. Civilians struck a building in Tel Aviv. An innocent woman was killed. And 20
Again, this is sort of how many civilians has Israel killed? 100,000 in Gaza alone. And so for this man to be saying this is self-righteous and, quite frankly, disgusting, if I'm honest with you. This man is what happens. Again, I'm going to be real crude here, but I'm going to say it. When a rabbi takes a shit, he uses Kabbalistic sort of chants or whatever to make it use the matter to make a golem and appoint it as a politician. That's what this man is.
21 people were injured. This is a regime that destabilizes wherever it reaches.
Yeah, this is a regime that destabilizes whatever. All right, okay, Mr. Shit Golem. Let's listen to whatever other nonsense you have to say, Mr. Shit Golem.
It spreads violence outward while crushing freedom at home. It is what
Now, it's true that Iran, their government does suppress freedom at home. But do you know another government that does that? Saudi Arabia. They do that. In fact, Iran is a liberal paradise compared to Saudi Arabia. Let's get that straight.
reacting. It is expanding. It is a machinery of radicalism that does not recognize borders.
Jacob, what is the risk here at home?
Well, absolutely. As the ambassador said, I mean, it's really the depravity of this regime and that it knows no limits and no recognition of human life. What we saw, for example, on October 7th, Hamas's actions, that is just a small expression.
Again, you're trying to attribute what Hamas did to Iran. That's not fair. That's like saying what the Peshmerga have done, America is responsible for. If we're to use that line of thinking, speaking as someone who is a big supporter of the Peshmerga, I might add, the fact of the matter is that it's not Iran that did it, it is Hamas that did it. And this is weaselly, again, propagandistic BS being pumped out in order to try and drum up the beat for war. The war drums being used in order to try and get everyone involved into this BS, into this nonsense, into this evil.
Of the scale of evil that this regime represents. And you hear reports of it as well over the last few weeks in Tehran, in the streets of Iran, there, how they treat their citizens, putting people alive in body bags and so forth. So I think, to your question, I think that the risk and the real threat here is the attacks on soft targets, on faith community centers.
See, this man here is such a nasty, evil swine, isn't he? That he's happy to be a cheerleader for you to go to war and for your money to pay for this. Let's say that the Iranian regime is as evil as they say it is. And I'm not saying that it isn't problematic, that's not the same thing. But let's say that it is. So what? You know, think about it. Any regime that believes themselves to be backed into a corner is going to fight back. There was the feigned diplomacy on the part of Donald Trump not that long ago. It has now become evident with this attack. This attack was premeditated, that they never gave a damn. They never intended to have a peaceful resolution to this affair. They never intended it.
Certainly on personnel and bases, but particularly on the easy targets for them, the sleeper cells, as well as the global terror network that Iran runs and has been running for almost 5 decades now.
The global terror network. Isn't that interesting? And yet, no talk about the Gulf states and all the propaganda that they funded, and now they are responsible for the Islamist movement entirely. When you think about it, no, we're going to zero in on Iran and this global terror movement. There's no evidence for this, by the way. There is no evidence for this whatsoever.